I don't really know where to start. I guess I just need to get this off my chest because it's been eating me alive. I'm 30 now, and a few years ago, I was married to someone I thought would be my forever. We met when I was 20 and he was 22. He was funny, calm, and dependable, and for a long time, I thought we had the kind of relationship people envy. We didn't fight much, and when we did, it never lasted more than a few hours. We always came back to each other, said sorry, and moved on. When we got married, I felt sure I'd made the right choice. A year into our marriage, I got pregnant. We were over the moon about it. We told our parents and friends before we even hit the safe mark because we couldn't hold it in. We talked about baby names, painted the spare room, made lists of things we'd need. It felt like our lives were finally going in the direction we always dreamed about. And then one night I woke up with cramps so bad I couldn't breathe. I was vomiting and crying, and my husband rushed me to the hospital. The doctor told us there was no heartbeat. Just like that, it was over. Everything we'd planned disappeared in a few sentences I barely heard. I remember the sound of the monitor more than the words. My husband held my hand while I cried, and he was crying too, but I could feel something changing in that room, something breaking inside both of us that we couldn't fix. Afterward, I felt like I was floating outside of my own life. Everyone around me kept saying how sorry they were, but I just wanted to stop existing for a while. My husband, let's call him Ben, tried at first. He made me tea, stayed home with me, kept the lights dim. But as the weeks passed, he started pulling away. He said work was stressful. He said he needed space. He stopped sitting next to me on the couch. He barely touched me. When I tried to talk about what happened, he said it hurt too much and that seeing me reminded him of it. I understood, but it still hurt. It felt like the person who was supposed to be grieving with me had turned me into the symbol of his pain. Whenever friends came over, he was his old self again, joking, chatting, being warm. As soon as they left, the silence came back. I could barely get him to look at me. The house felt like a museum of what we'd lost. I started blaming myself. I replayed every meal I ate, every workout I did, every night I stayed up too late. I kept thinking maybe I caused it. Maybe if I'd been different, we'd still have our baby. Maybe he wouldn't hate looking at me. I tried suggesting therapy, but it turned into another fight. He told me I was trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. After months of walking on eggshells, I was desperate for someone to talk to. That's how I made the biggest mistake of my life. My husband's best friend, Jason, had always been around. He was at our wedding. He helped Ben plan the proposal. I knew him through Ben, and in some ways, he was the only person who knew both of us. I thought if anyone could reach Ben, it would be him. So I messaged him one day, asked if we could talk. I said I wanted advice, not pity. We met for coffee. It wasn't supposed to be anything more than that. I remember feeling nervous, but relieved to finally speak about everything out loud. He listened. He told me I didn't deserve to be treated like a ghost in my own marriage. I cried in front of him, and I hadn't cried in front of anyone in months. For a little while, it felt like I could breathe again. When it started raining, he offered to drive me home, but we ended up at his place instead because it was close by. We were both soaked. He got us drinks. We drank too much. I remember crying again, him hugging me, saying he was sorry for everything that had happened to us. It's hard to explain how that turned into sleeping together. It wasn't planned. It wasn't romantic. It was a mess. I just remember the feeling of wanting to forget everything for a few hours. I wanted to feel something that wasn't sadness. I wanted to feel like I was still alive. It was selfish and wrong, and there's no excuse that makes it better. When I woke up the next morning, everything hit me like a truck. Jason looked just as wrecked as I felt. We both said it was a mistake. I left immediately. When I got home, Ben was still asleep on the couch. I told him I'd stayed at a friend's because of the rain. He didn't even ask which one. For a few days, I convinced myself it could be buried. I told myself that telling him would only destroy what was left of us. But every time I looked at him, the guilt got heavier. He was distant, but he didn't deserve to be lied to on top of everything. I told him a week later. I thought I owed him the truth, even if it meant losing him. He didn't scream at first. He just stared at me for what felt like forever, like he was trying to see if I was serious. Then he told me to get in the car. I didn't even argue. We drove to Jason's office, and he went straight in. I stayed in the car and heard yelling from inside. When he came out, his knuckles were bleeding. He told me to pack my things and get out of his house. He said I had destroyed everything good in his life, that he wished he had never met me, that he was glad we lost the baby because it meant he could leave me with a clean conscience. That night, I checked into a cheap hotel with a suitcase and cried until there was nothing left. He blocked my number. I tried to call a few times and eventually left a message telling him which hotel I was staying at in case he wanted to talk. He didn't. I stayed there for about 2 weeks. I barely ate. I went to work but couldn't focus. Eventually, he called not to talk but to tell me he'd filed for divorce. I remember the calmness in his voice. He said it was done, that he couldn't live with me anymore, and that we'd arranged to separate everything through lawyers. I tried to tell him I loved him, but he hung up before I finished the sentence. I wanted to hate Jason, but I couldn't even muster that. It wasn't like he manipulated me. It was mutual weakness at the worst possible time. Still, it didn't matter. The damage was done. He moved out of town soon after. I haven't seen him since. The divorce went through faster than I expected. Ben didn't want anything from me. He said keeping the house would only remind him of everything that happened. He sold it. I took what I had and rented a small apartment across town. It was strange how quickly a whole life could dissolve into boxes. His mom called me once during the process. She had always been kind to me like a second mother. Her voice was cold that day. She said she didn't know how I could do something like that after everything her son had been through. She said she didn't hate me, but she never wanted to see me again. That hurt almost as much as losing him. It's been over 2 years since the divorce. Sometimes I still wake up thinking I hear him in the kitchen making coffee. Sometimes I forget for a second that he's not part of my life anymore. I haven't dated anyone seriously since. I've gone on a few dates, but every time I get close to someone, I pull back. I'm scared of myself more than I'm scared of being hurt again. I used to think cheating was something other people did, selfish people who didn't care about their partners. Now I know it can happen when you're broken and desperate and not thinking clearly, but knowing that doesn't make it any less wrong. I went to therapy after the divorce. At first, I thought it would be about saving the marriage, but it ended up being about understanding myself. I had to face that what I did came from loneliness and guilt and grief I never dealt with. I used to think love was enough to keep two people together, but it isn't. You can love someone deeply and still destroy what you have if you don't know how to face pain together. Ben never reached out after the divorce was finalized. He got a new job in another city. I saw on social media that he's engaged now. She looks kind. I don't blame him for moving on quickly. I think he deserves someone who didn't remind him of loss every time he looked at her. I deleted Jason's number. I deleted everything that reminded me of that night. I used to replay it, trying to understand how I could have stopped myself, where the line was that I crossed, and if there had been a moment I could have pulled back. But it doesn't change anything. It happened. It's done. I live with it every day. People say time heals, but I think time just teaches you how to carry the weight differently. I still think about the baby sometimes and about the life Ben and I were supposed to have. I think about the version of me that believed marriage was simple if you loved hard enough. That version of me is gone. What's left is quieter, more cautious, maybe wiser, definitely lonelier. I don't want sympathy. I don't think I deserve it. I just needed to say it out loud, or as close to out loud as possible. I ruined the best thing in my life. I did it when I was lost and hurting, and the worst part is that I can't even ask for forgiveness because I don't think I'd forgive me either. I've learned that grief doesn't excuse betrayal, and pain doesn't cancel consequences. I know some people will read this and think I'm a terrible person, and that's fine. Maybe I am. But I also know that people are complicated. We make decisions we think we'll never make until the ground falls out from under us. I can't go back and fix it. I can only accept that it happened, that I caused it, and that the man I love now has a chance at peace without me in his life. Sometimes I think that's what love really is in the end, letting the person you broke find happiness somewhere you can't follow. I hope he's happy. I really do. And I hope one day I can forgive myself enough to be happy too.